So the red light is flashing. When it goes green, we're supposed to start. Yeah. All right. Is that too loud? Are you guys good with that audio? All right. All right. We have a green light. Welcome back to Self, everyone. Did you really bring a Windows laptop to a Linux conference? Let's see. So did I. You know what? Hey, Windows is good stuff. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes you don't have a choice, right? If you're in the corporate environment, you know, sometimes you don't have a choice. You're given what you got. And so my talk, I'm going to kind of give away the premise here, but is we got to interact between Windows and Linux, and both ways, right? And so I've got some tips for you and some things that I wanted to know about when I was first getting into Windows, or getting into Linux. Hopefully I don't mistalk too much in here. All right, so I'm Mark Ulmer. I did do this talk last year too, but this is really for beginners. So if you're into containers and GitHub, you're in the wrong room. All right, Dan's presentation's next door. But if you're a beginner, this is good. I tried to break down my presentation into 3 sections, kind of the home users and students, more the hobbyists or retired guys, and then corporate environments, sysadmins and programmers. So the first section we'll cover is the home student, and then we'll progress with my tips. All right. So again, a home user or student, if you get out and purchase a new laptop, it's going to come with Windows most likely, right? If you just go to Walmart or Best Buy or order on Amazon, and it's going to come out of the box with Windows, and you know, part of your purchase price included that Windows operating system, right? So you don't want to just delete it right away. That's at least a $100 value of some type. So, and you may just be too unfamiliar, right? So a couple of things that you can do, right? Students are, home and student people may be adverse to going directly to loading Linux. So completely understand that. It's fine. So in the old days we used to dual boot desktops, right? Laptops are a little harder, right? You don't want to be opening up that brand new thing and ripping out a hard drive and putting a new one in. So let's see what tips I have here. So my first tip is to boot a live Linux. Linux with all the various flavors will be able to, they typically have a live version. We don't have CDs anymore in the new laptops, but you can boot USBs. And one of the things you can do, this is a new Acer. It's about 1.5 years old, but when I got this, first thing I did was throw in a live distro to see if the Wi-Fi was supported. And guess what? It wasn't. On the boot up the live Linux, tried to run the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth didn't work. And so how did I resolve that? Well, I went with, if I recall, I went with a Ubuntu version where I could upgrade the kernel. Linux Mint wouldn't allow me to upgrade the kernel, I don't believe. But now they have that advanced hardware version, so that may have been something to try. But anyways, just plug in the USB, boot it up, see if everything works, and then if you like and can get familiar, go to some websites that you like. Make sure that you can do the things you generally want to do from the Linux Live before destroying that Windows, right? So that's one of the first things. And all these distributions, right? Which one do you start with, right? I got a friend here. He's really hot on the SUSE Linux. That's great. But you know what? At years and years of myself using Linux, Ubuntu and Mint are I'm more familiar with the app package, and I stick in that area. So now when it comes from GNOME or Mate or XFCE, well, you can try all these things and see which ones you like. That's all before having to install it. Just boot it live, see if you like it, that type of thing. So one of the latest hotness in booting off of USBs is Ventoy. Ventoy, and again, I've got handouts up front. You can grab at the end that have the links for this. But Ventoy allows you to format a USB, and then you can just drag and drop a whole bunch of ISOs on there. This Ventoy you can install from Linux or Windows, and you just download those Linux ISOs from Ubuntu. You can get Mate, Budgie, GNOME, XFCE. Put 4 or 5 of them on there, and I'll actually show this in a demo at the end. Put them all on there, and then boot up, and then select the one you want. PinDrive Linux was the kind of the older tool we used. It's still a great tool. I've used it for years. But Ventoy is the latest hotness. Works very well, by the way. There's a picture of Ventoy. And you see here I was trying out Linux Mint, Ubuntu, MX Linux. I know it's small, Pop OS. All these things are very popular, and you want to give them a try before you actually install. Otherwise, you're going to waste hours, right? So that's what Ventoy looks like. Now, when you are ready to, let's say you figure out that you like a certain distro, and again, I don't want to rip out the Windows just yet. You can use Rufus and Balena Etcher to build a USB that you can actually run from, okay? And it allows what's called persistent storage. So your home files and your profile, your bookmarks in your browser, those can all be saved to a USB. And this will allow you to run from the USB. And when you want to go back to Windows, just pull that out and reboot. A lot of security-minded people like this idea too, because then their OS is on their thumb drive. Their whole operating system's on their thumb drive. They stick it in their pocket, chain it to their neck or whatever, and then they're not worried about if their computer gets stolen or whatever. MX Linux, by the way, works very well running from USB. I'm part of the Atlanta Linux enthusiast group, and again, that will be on the show notes too. Well, we've got a couple of folks that they strictly run from USB, running MX Linux, and they love it. And if someone in their family takes a laptop, they've got their USB, they just grab another piece of hardware and plug it in and boot up, do what they need. So this is a little bit different mode between the booting live and not being able to store stuff. This mode will allow you to store all your settings and your browser bookmarks and cookies and all that other stuff. Make sure you get a USB 3.1 or higher. These things are dirt cheap. Look at I just went on Amazon. 64 gig is $10, $12, $10. Yeah. So I've got one of these in the USB drive here. That's the size of it. Little nano thing. It's not going to stick out very far. There's for the camera video. It's not going to stick out very far. They call these kind of a nano USB. Nothing's going to hit it or really rip out of the box. So. And stick with a name brand on these. I would. there are a lot of cheap USBs online, but you know, hey, this one will you could probably put 20 ISOs on there, at least. And then if you want a little bit, you know. All right. And again, persistent storage is possible. If you got a USB 2.0 just laying around the house, you can use that. It's just going to be slow, and you're going to be hating yourself. So just get a little bit faster storage. All right. Now I'm switching gears to more of the home hobbyist or computer hobbyist. Sometimes they have custom requirements. Like for myself, I used to like to build mid-towers with ATX motherboards. I built those things all myself. I don't really like laptops. I like the full power. I like having power on all the time. I like Ethernet, you know, and I like to have my same exact setup on my multiple workstations. You know, my same keyboard, my same Logitech mouse. I like to have it all. I like to have dual monitors, and so sometimes these scenarios for home hobbyists are a little bit different. Okay, maybe the hardware is a little bit older, and again, in those scenarios, you may want to choose something like a dual boot. You know, the dual boot options, you have that whole thing where you can switch you can partition half and use part Windows, part Linux. Of course, I don't like that. I like having two separate hard drives. One's Linux, one's Windows, and then you can switch between them. There may be other custom requirements, right? Again, some of them may not have Wi-Fi, so you may need to buy little dongles and such. But that's actually a great option because as those little Wi-Fi things get out of date, just go buy a new one and then plug in the new Wi-Fi module. Of course, the other custom scenarios, you can run VMs on boxes that have a lot more storage and a lot more RAM. You can do VMs. Now, how do you interact with these things? Well, one of the things you can do is I use Windows as a daily driver for my work, okay? And I have to have Windows. I have to do that to run programs. So one of my options is I set up, it's called XRDP. On all my Linux boxes, I have XRDP running. That runs remote desktop protocol on Linux. And then I can just, on the left-hand side here, I pull up my Microsoft Terminal Services RDP, Remote Desktop Connection, and then I just remote desktop to my Linux box. Then I hit full screen, and I'm on my daily driver, I'm running a full session with my Linux. You can cut and paste between here. So on Windows, you just click a file, copy, click on the Linux remote desktop, and paste. It'll paste it right on the desktop or in a folder. You can copy passwords, URLs. I can just switch back and forth. So it's called XRDP for X Windows, RDP. Check that out. That's something that you may want to consider. Again, very flexible. I've got a dual monitor setup. I got Windows on the left side, and then running in a remote desktop session, I have my Linux. So I got two monitors. I got Windows and Linux basically running right by each other, using the same keyboard, mouse, just jumping back and forth very easily. Now, what if you want to go the other way? Well, Ramina is, I think I say that right. Ramina is a remote desktop client in Linux to go to Windows. So let's say you do decide that you're going to go the other way, but you say, I still need Windows available to me. So you install Linux on your laptop, but Windows is that desktop at home. Well, you can pull up Romina and then just RDP to it. Now, of course, your Windows box has got to be Windows Pro. I did put it up there. Windows Pro allows remote desktop connections. I don't think Windows Home and Student allow that. Maybe in Windows 11 now. I don't know. I always remember you had to have Pro. Right. Well, remember, we're talking about two things here, too, is the inbound versus outbound. Right, this is inbound to the Windows.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
they put it in so you called up Microsoft.
Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, that might be the remote assistance, though.
That is.
Yeah. Okay. The comment from the audience is we do need Pro. All right, well, again, that's where you've decided, okay, I really like Linux. I'm going to try to immerse myself. I want to use it every day. But then I got that one app that will only run under Windows. Well, just remote over that computer and use it. And yeah, I absolutely have those couple of apps that just will not run on anything else. So
I'll tell you something else to look at too, is something called No Machine.
Yep.
No Machine is wonderful. I use it every day.
Yeah, and so that's a great thing. There are other remote desktop clients that you can use. Some people like a tool called TeamViewer. There's No Desktop. There's a couple of those, and those are all great too. The reason I've given this tip, because that RDP is always built into Windows. So I try to interact with both. And remember, so I came from a corporate world, and I was trying to get into the Linux world, but my tools were limited. So I always had to deal with what was on my Windows laptop from corporate. So that's why I was trying to give these tips. All right. Okay, for a desktop or laptop for daily use, again, like I mentioned, this laptop, the drivers, when you buy a laptop that's basically less than 1 year old, when they started manufacturing those, sometimes the drivers may not be in the Linux kernel just yet. So actually, 1 to 2 year old equipment is just perfect. And when you go buy something at Best Buy or order on Amazon, those things are not going to be built yesterday. They're going to be built. There's some type of lag through the supply chain, right? But so sometimes you may get lucky, maybe 1 year old, and all the drivers are in there. Certainly, if you go out right now and look at the latest Lenovo Micro Center ad, where they're saying there's a special price and they're trying to, move equipment before the end of the year or at Christmas time, that stuff may not have all the drivers. And that's why I'm telling you, boot off that live and check it out. Eventually, those Wi-Fi drivers will be built into the kernel. There are some other architectural type of stuff like Bluetooth and all that you may have to wait for too, right? So just keep that in mind. All right, what should I go with if I want beginner friendly? Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Arch, Fedora. Well, SUSE Linux. If someone tells you, "Oh, you're a beginner, you should start with Arch," they're lying to you. You can get into big trouble with the package and installers with Arch. Now maybe it's just because Mark doesn't have a lot of experience with that, but through many years of our, like I said, I'm in the Atlanta Linux group. Typically, we find beginner-friendly operating systems are the Linux Mint, and which is based upon Ubuntu. All right. Certainly, once you get more advanced, the others, Arch and Fedora, and maybe SUSE would be great. Yeah, there's so many. But again, this is where booting off that live Ventoy USB is going to be very helpful for you to figure those things out.
I would say your biggest problem is avoiding NVIDIA drivers if you can. That is probably the biggest delineation between happiness and sadness in trying to run Linux on a desktop.
Yeah, that's true. Video drivers have a big play in it, but some people that get into, we've got some people that are developers and they're getting into AI software now. We just had a talk on our, I'm on a webcast with Nate, Cubicle Nate's in the audience, just this last Sunday, and they were showing that all this AI software only runs with NVIDIA, and I believe it's called the CUDA framework, right? So if you buy something with AMD or ATI graphics, you're not going to be doing those things. So there's pluses and minuses. Again, avoiding NVIDIA is sometimes best, but sometimes that's what you want. Good point, though, yeah. Now, what if you're on a budget? And again, retired persons are, come to our Linux meetings and they're like, I'm on a budget, I just can't be. But my really, really old laptop, I want to get a less old laptop. And maybe they go to, here in Charlotte, there's a place called The Grid, and they, you may go there and get a used laptop or something. One of the things that we found out, and this is one of my recommendations here, you want to look at the pass mark. There's a website, and again, the website's going to be on the show notes, I believe, and it's like passmark.net or something like that. You need to look up what the, and while you're there at the Grid or at Best Buy or whatever, type in passmark for Intel 558 whatever, and type it in and see what the passmark is. If it's less than 1200, you're probably not going to be happy with that. All right, that's where you really need to say, can I spend an extra $25 or and go up a little bit better? Go ahead, What is Passmark? So Passmark is a CPU benchmark. And then it's a benchmark that it doesn't matter about the OS or anything, it's just the CPU and its features. So you can Google this and find out what the pass marks are. It's a good metric to use to figure out where you want to fall on this. Again, if you got a pass mark of 1500 or more, then you'll be fine, but you probably want to stick with the lightweight desktops, Ubuntu or XFCE. Okay, and then if you buy something that's again within a year, 5 years, you're going to have a pass mark over 2500. That'll run anything. That'll run the GNOME desktop. The Cinnamon is a nice, pretty one that most beginner friendly. It seems like it's the most Windows-like that people figure out the minimizing and maximizing and dragging and all that stuff. That way you'll be fine with all of that. And then my next recommendation is replace the hard, if it's got a spinning hard drive, replace it with an SSD. They may say, okay, well, this is an old laptop, it doesn't take SSDs. Well, no, what we're talking about is get one of those SSDs that's a 2.5 inch or 2.5 inch SATA drive. This one, incidentally, came with, this is an Asus tough gaming laptop. It came with a NVMe drive with Windows built on it, and I didn't want to rip it out. So I bought another NVMe drive. I did my research to what would fit in here, and it was like a 2250. It's a little short NVMe drive, and there's a second slot. So ordered that. That showed up a couple of days after the laptop, and I plugged that in, and then when I installed my Linux, I installed to the second NVMe. So my original Windows that came out of the box, it's from the manufacturer, is still in here. I just don't boot to it. I boot to it sometimes to patch it, like once a year. But it's there because, again, I wanted to save that value of having a Windows license. So if you have an older laptop, replace it with an SSD. If you have an older desktop, again, look up these pass marks. If these things, if your pass marks are not meeting this, you need to probably consider, at least getting up 1,500 or more. Yes, sir.
The other recommendation I would have for either a desktop or a laptop.
Here, use this so that we get it on the recording.
Got it. Okay. The other recommendation I would have for upgrading a desktop or laptop that's 5 to 8 years old would be upgrading the memory if you can.
Yeah. Because
that's your second biggest bang for the buck for making it that much better.
That's right. Yeah. If you're getting a slow, if you like having 20, 30 browser tabs open and you're using Chromium, you're going to want to upgrade the RAM, definitely. If you want to run virtual machines, which we'll get into in a little bit, you're going to need more RAM, right? But if it's just, if you're on a budget, you got to deal with the RAM that's in there. The biggest things here are look at the CPU and the SSD. Make sure you have that. Now, what about a Pi 4 or a Raspberry Pi 400? Well, these things you still cannot, a Pi 4 you still cannot get. And, a Raspberry Pi 4 was, before COVID, was touted as a $35, $35 little computer. And, at the time that was great. But we missed it, and COVID came, and now you can't get one for $35. So you can get one for $160, $80 or something like that. The Raspberry Pi 400 is the one where it's a keyboard and the Raspberry Pi is built in. Now, those are still available, and I bought one. It's a nice little hobby type of thing. I did, the pass mark is 1834. So, if we go back a slide, if I can go back. Oh, that screwed it up. All right, 1 second here. Oh, arrow keys, there we go. Okay. So if a Raspberry Pi 400 is at 1800 pass mark, it's an ARM CPU, I need to choose the lightweight desktop. And so I used Ubuntu. That worked perfect. Anything more, is just the browsing and everything was just too sluggish, okay? It's not an SSD. It's a SD card. And those things are a little bit slower, right? So that's not going to be your daily driver, but it is a very interesting hobby computer. When and if the Raspberry Pis become available this year, I understand that the Raspberry Pi Foundation put the Pi 5 on hold, and they're going to try to flood the market, and all the scalpers will hopefully buy up a bunch of them, but then there'll be plenty for consumers. When those come available again, you may want to consider it if the price goes back down in that target range, less than $50, $40. Yeah, I would buy one. They're great for media server. You can use them as a desktop. They're just not super great. Just keep that in mind. Let's see, what was I showing here? And even the Raspberry Pi Foundation's imager has got the Ubuntu images in there. So that's an option. All right, what about virtual machines? So there is, on Windows, you can install VirtualBox or VMware Workstation. I don't know what the latest, Workstation Player, I don't know what the latest version is. Yeah. 17. Oh, 17, thank you. There's going to be some limitations here, right? Some of the hardware may not pass through properly. It's going to be emulated based upon how they've decided that hardware is emulated. But absolutely, this is another way to run Linux within Windows. So you've got Windows, install the software, then you can create little VMs and play with them. And if you're wanting to learn a command line server only, build a VM for that. If you want to build a desktop VM, build a desktop. Try various ones. You can boot those live, or you can boot them and persist the disks. You can do all of that. Any other comments on virtual machines within Windows? Again, sometime within that, you can use them in windowed mode. You may or may not be able to cut and paste. Depends if you install the VM tools. But you can go full screen and then be kind of in your Linux world. Remember, it's going to take away the RAM from whatever RAM you give that VM is going to take away from your Windows box. Yes, sir. You want to?
Some of the
Go
newer
ahead,
Windows machine, you're going to have Hyper-V turned on.
Yeah.
So you're going to need a later version of VirtualBox.
Yeah.
Because the original version wouldn't nest, but now they made it so that it nests.
Okay. Yeah. So just make sure you download the latest ones. Yeah. Okay. And then when you're ready to put on the tux, then you can install directly and wipe out that Windows crap, as some of our folks say on the Linux group. You can do it at drag and install. Certainly, if you have an old Windows 7 or Windows 8, maybe just get rid of that stuff. Go directly for Linux install, right? If someone hands you an old computer with Linux and they say, this is yours now, well, wait, I think I misspoke. If someone hands you an old computer with Windows 7 or 8, and you're ready to just wipe that out, then yeah, just do a direct install. But again, boot up make sure you know which one you're looking for. All right, now we're switching gears to kind of the more of the sysadmin or programmers in a corporate environment or at home. You're typically going to be using a desktop, or it could be a laptop. Again, it depends upon if you're in an office or working remote. And the corporate environment is typically going to deliver you a Windows image, right? It's what corporate America does. And you may not be able to install software. So you've got to look for creative options. So one of the first things is within Windows 10 and 11, there's what's called a Windows Services for Linux. So basically, Microsoft allowed Linux to be installed as a plugin underneath Windows. And this is a great option. It's available, Ubuntu is available within the Microsoft Store, and then you can just go there and then hit the install. Yeah. And so if you're in a corporate environment and they say, no, you can't have Linux, well, you say, well, can I have Windows for Linux? Oh, we're going to have to ask about that probably. But if they can manage it, maybe you have a chance, right? This will give you a complete terminal environment. In Windows 11, you can even run GUI apps, but I haven't tried that. But they tell me you can do it. We used to, in corporate world, we had to ask for PuTTY, and that was pretty easy to get. Whether or not you could install it yourself, or you had to ask the admins to install PuTTY for you. Well, this actually gives you a full Linux command line and gives you a lot more flexibility. You can set up and manage your SSH keys a lot better. PuTTY had its little PuTTY key file thing that was kind of quirky, and it didn't really follow like standard open source practices and such, but this is a great option, I think, and it's something you may be able to get your corporate environment to allow for. VM software is not required, then, so you don't have to ask for that VMware or VMware player. Just install it. I run this today. I work with some people in India, and they have a BYOD, bring your own device, but they're required to use Windows. All right, and of course, and they're also their environment, their subcontractors, they end up having to use free a lot. Well, this gives them a full Linux command line. They can do everything, and they can help out with all the server admin that we have to do in my corporate world. So it's a great option for them. They can install, we use GCP, Google Cloud at my work. They can install the Google Cloud command lines. You can do that in PowerShell too, but this gives them the ability to all run it from Linux. So Windows, go into, open a Ubuntu terminal, then run gcloud, then you're off onto some server in the cloud. It's a great option. Again, right-click, cut, and paste all works between windows. There's no virtualization tying your hands there. Now, on Windows 10, this will not work with it will not run the Linux GUIs. Windows 11 adds the GUI apps. Again, I have not tested this. You have to have you have to have a Windows subsystem for Linux version 2, and then you may have the chance. But then you also have to install a desktop. Looks like the same app, it's just, it's the framework underneath in the Windows 11. Keep in mind, when you use this, your user and password in Ubuntu is not the same as the user and password on Windows. So you can make the username the same, but the password does not synchronize with the Windows. So you'll have to set it separately. All right. And here's a tip for what I do. I use symbolic links, so now we're getting a little bit more technical. Sorry for the newbies, but we're getting a little bit more technical here. In the Linux command line, my home folder in Windows, you can map that and use those files. So you can find your Windows home on mount/mnt/c/users with a capital U/ for me, it was Mark. And then I can get to all my subfolders for downloads and documents and all your normal Windows stuff that you've downloaded. It's fully available there. And then what I've done is I've done symbolic links so that my downloads and documents folders appear in my Linux command line shell, and I CD'd into downloads, and then I have a whole bunch of files there and everything that I've downloaded on Windows. And or if I download something on Linux, I'll do a wget or a curl, and then those things are likewise available on Windows. So that's a little tip for you. Again, make it where you can interact but live within both worlds, right? It's very helpful. And every once in a while I get in that scenario where there was only certain things I could do in Windows. I don't know how to do that in Linux, but I got to do it now. I'll go do it on the Windows side or vice versa. And that's what it looks like. So some of us that are familiar with command line, now you can see that those green highlights are how links show up. Yeah. All right. And you see my .ssh folder there? That's where I'm managing all my keys into the other world. All right. Oh, I have a slide for that. So this makes a great client for SSH. Again, I can go into cd into home/.ssh, and here's an example of a command config file. If you've never used a config file, look into this. It's a really great option to pre-set up what keys you want to go to what server. So my Ubuntu server Plex is the host name, and it's going to always use, whenever I SSH, it's automatically going to use the user mark if I don't specify anything else. And then my identity file, it's going to use my mark.rsa key, the private key. That's a way where you don't have to type on the command line all the various options that you're going to pass into SSH. This will kind of preset it up for you. So, and then all I do is I type SSH Plex. All right, let's dive into a little Linux help. All right. Now, what if you just need an SSH client? Well, you know what? You don't even need Linux for that. But we're here at a Linux conference. By the way, PowerShell does have an SSH client. So that is fully available. You don't necessarily need one. But guess what's not included? Some of the tools that we normally like to use, like SSH copy ID, it's like I need that. I need that to copy to my remote machines. So I don't know if there's another option, some other command line, but it's not available. Okay. Yeah. Yep. So the comment from the audience was yes, SSH is available in the PowerShell. Okay, so the comment from the audience was that the Windows terminal is a little bit better for SSH than the PowerShell window. All right. All right. When we were in that Microsoft store looking for Ubuntu, there are other options available. So a lot of people are like, I'm very interested in security. I want to learn with Kali Linux. Well, that's available in the Microsoft store also. So is Debian. You don't have to just go with Ubuntu. I typically lean more Ubuntu myself. So that's why it's a lot in the slides. But there are other Linuxes in the Microsoft store. So give some fair share to those other distributions. Remember, Kali Linux within Windows subsystem for Linux, you're not going to be able to do everything. There's certain things that the Microsoft hasn't exposed to you. And so if you're trying to, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, try to inspect some memory bytes or something. There may be areas where Microsoft's not going to allow you to go, right? Remember, you're within that framework. You may try to do port scans on something, but then your Windows firewall, your Windows host-based firewall may prevent certain apps from doing certain things. So just remember you're in a limited environment. But it's a great way to test out and see what commands are available and see what things you can run. All right, I am a security guy by my day job, and my biggest advice to you and to my family members and everyone is patch, patch, and patch. Just if you got iPads, you need to patch them. If you got Android tablets, I got a NordicTrack treadmill. It runs Linux. You need to patch it. Patch, and patch. Patch everywhere. If you run those VMs, if you run a VM in a virtual machine and you haven't run it for 2 years, you need it. First thing when it starts up, you need to patch it. If you're running Linux distributions off that Ventoy, you need to download the latest image and put it on there. I don't want you running old software and getting hacked, right? So just patch everything. Keep it the most current. On Ubuntu, you can do sudo apt-get update and sudo apt upgrade -y. Just patch it. Linux Mint, again, if you're beginner and looking for beginner friendly, Linux Mint's going to tell you, hey, there's updates, and it's going to automatically install security updates, but other updates you'll have the option installing. Yep. Why don't we use the mic though? So for the recording, please.
Hold it close to your mouth.
Setting up unattended upgrades for Debian family, so Debian and Ubuntu is a really good thing to do, and then DNF automatic you can do through Cockpit on Red Hat family.
Yeah.
SUSE, I don't know. Sorry.
Our SUSE guy left the room.
No, he's right there.
Oh, he is? All right, go ahead.
I was actually just curious as to what the -y option was.
Just as a default, yes. Yep. Don't wait for any other prompts. Just do it. Just say yes. All right. Let's see what else I have. All right. Yeah. So that's just my message around keeping everything updated, and and keep your Windows updated. I know that's a real pain because then you do have to reboot, but keep your Windows patched. Microsoft Tuesday is still a real thing. Happens every Tuesday of the month. First Tuesday of the month, right? All right.
It seems like it's every Tuesday.
Maybe it's every Tuesday? All right. Comment? Use password manager. Oh, yeah. And so the comment from the audience was, you also need to use a password manager. I am a big proponent of KeePass XC, but if you use any password manager, except for LastPass, then you'll do great. I will tell you, my passwords, you can go out and find them right now on the internet. My passwords have been exposed through the LinkedIn breach and many other breaches. So if you dug hard, if any of you guys are security, you'll find one of my old passwords. That password is no longer in use. And in my password manager, I have long random passwords, and 2 years ago, I'm going up on 2 years now, I have been unique password compliant on all my websites. So if I lose any one password on LinkedIn or something, that doesn't affect me anywhere else. So I have no idea what the hell that password is, but it's my phone away. I got the KeePass synchronized here, and I can look up the password and get it. And of course, my family hates me whenever they're like, "Dad, what's the password for Netflix?" And I'm like, "It's HK.5 capital Q." They're like, "Dad," and I'm like, "It's too bad. That's how it is." So, yeah, I'm changing it next week. Hey, another neat option is, these websites that use the one-time password codes, OTPs. KeePass XC has that for time-based passwords. You can synchronize it in there. So if you had some token that you're using on your phone, well, now you have a backup token because you can use it within KeePass XC. So, yeah.
I'll also tell you, buy a YubiKey and learn how to use it.
YubiKeys are a little bit more advanced, but that's a great way to go.
I use Bitwarden. I put my self-host on my server, so if the public Bitwarden server gets compromised, I'm not vulnerable.
Okay. Yeah, there's on the Destination Linux, a lot of the sponsorship comes from Bitwarden, and those guys really, they all love it and use it. So I would say Bitwarden's popular. Your comment, you can self-host it or use the cloud, that's great. My company, after this LastPass breach, they finally said, that's enough. My corporate employer. And so we're switching off of LastPass. So LastPass has been breached several times the past couple of years, right? So, all right, good comment. Thank you for mentioning password managers. I actually put all my URLs in there because then there's a browser plugin, everything synchronizes, and then I don't really have to supply the password, it looks it up. But that's a great option when it has allowed me to go, again, unique password on all my accounts. All right. So I've mentioned a couple of times, I'm part of the Atlanta Linux enthusiasts. Since COVID, we meet online. We used to meet every Sunday in person, and we meet every Sunday online now, and everyone is welcome to join us. We typically, there's no set agenda. We will just help people with questions and getting set up. If they have a driver issue, we've helped people recently with their printing needs. Also, 2 weeks ago, we helped a guy with a scanner. He couldn't figure out the scanners and how to scan a document to PDF. Well, we figured that out. 3 weeks ago, we helped a gal with printing. She was trying to print a PDF, and there's a certain built-in PDF reader in, I forgot the name of it. Anyways, for some reason, that one just has stopped working, and it won't print. It's a known issue with the software, and we just switched to a different PDF reader reviewer, and it printed just fine. But lots of people to help, lots of various experiences. Some are computer hobbyists, some are corporate world, and we just help everyone out. When it comes to cloud and security, I usually answer those questions. But like I said, we've got all sorts of people from different backgrounds. And we're consistently available every Sunday from 3 to 6 U.S. Eastern Time. You're welcome to jump on there and ask your question and then get off or stick around. If you don't know, if you're a beginner and you don't know about DistroWatch, again, this will be on the show notes, but this is where you go to find out all the top information around Linux. This is kind of the industry de facto standard. There is a rating system of the top Linux distros, but that it can be manipulated from click-throughs and such, because it's just a click-through monitor. But if you want to see the capabilities of these various tools and what software they come with, this is kind of the encyclopedia of where you go to. If you're wondering, what's going on with the Budgie desktop, and you're not sure what's going on with that, or you're not sure what's going on with some old software like Solus, well, you can look it up, and this will take you to the official website. Don't just go in the browser and Google for Linux FX or something. You could end up on a illegitimate site and them trying to give you some download that's been hacked, right? So make sure you're downloading your ISO images from the source of the sites. Make sure you check those download keys. We got a question, go ahead.
Just a comment.
Mike.
I posted in the Telegram chat the command to pull your Windows keys from the BIOS. That way you can save space on your system.
Okay.
Just dump Windows altogether, take your key, save it. If you ever need Windows again, you've got it.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah, just a second. Get the mic.
On most machines that have an OEM install of Windows, the key is actually etched into the BIOS. So you don't need to be too careful about grabbing the key
Yeah.
or writing it down. It's inside of the BIOS.
Yeah, and that's probably true for this ACES Tough book, but I haven't done my research on that, and I need to check that out. Yeah. All right, let's see what else we have. So if you're not familiar with the Linux command line, and you're just getting into Linux, this is a great resource we point people to all the time. It's called the linuxjourney.com. It's a very simple interface, getting started command line, some text foo. I just really like the way that this is simplistic. It'll give you some, like 10 examples, and then you'll be able to go type them in. And it's a great resource. I highly suggest this one. And again, that'll be on this sheet of paper y'all can grab at the end. So Linux Journey. And then, when you get a little bit more dangerous, there's a Linux Upskill Challenge. Now, I got to be honest, I have not done this yet. But this is a great idea, and I want to tell you about it. Linux Upskill Challenge, you start the month, every month, on the first day. There's a GitHub that has commands, and it says, today, here's what we're going to do. It's going to take anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour, but here's your command challenge. Go and look at some files. Maybe that's the day one. I forget what day one is. Here are the commands. You're going to need to use ls. You're going to need to maybe use cd. Once you're done with that, you've completed the challenge for the day. But do it along, starting on July 1, and then July 2nd, there'll be a different challenge. They recently, there's a gentleman that has added videos also, recorded videos of what that challenge looks like and the answers. So you can watch the video and do it along. If you're like, well, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do that, you'll be able to do it, and there's videos. So I forget, is it 20 days? It goes over 20 days, I think. So it's something to kind of set your schedule and remind yourself, okay, this month I want to try this. You can go at your own pace, but the Discord channel and the other channels that they are available on the month to talk about on day one, to talk about the day one challenge and ask for help. So check that out. That's called the Linux Upskill Challenge. All right, and that's it. I'm going to show you the Ventoy live boot here. Just do that demo real quick, and then we can go into questions. So let's do a. Oh, thank you. All right. I am flashing yellow. All right, we're gonna restart. On my ACES Tough book here, I'm gonna press the F2 button. Okay, and then I'm gonna go boot menu, F8, and boot this little guy here. I sure hope this comes up on the video. You're kidding me. Okay, hang on a second here. Function. Nope, it's not going to work. All right. Well, I'm just going to put my laptop down here. Anyways, Ventoy, I've got a whole bunch of ISOs on here, and then you just kind of pick from it and boot. And anyways, one of the ISOs I have is System Rescue. It's a great ISO to have. So I'm going to pick, let's just go with Cinnamon. And there's really no demo. That's the end of the talk. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead. Let's use the mic, though.
So I've used stuff like XP, what'd you say it was called? XRPD, I believe, the remote system.
XRDP.
XRDP on my local net, but I have to use like real VNC or something outside of that. Would I have to like forward a port through my firewall to get that to work from outside? Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yeah. And don't use 3389.
Right. Right.
What I usually do is I'll just add a 3 to the beginning, 33, 389. And